Hey Gator Nation, welcome into our special preview of the University of Florida football season. You may know me, I'm Pat Dooley, used to be the columnist of the Gainesville Sun, still writing for a lot of people, including the Alumni newsletter, and Robbie Andreu. You hear him on the radio with me all the time and on the podcast with me as well. He's more of a house husband, though. He's gotten into that role.
Mr. Mom.
Mr. Mom, yes, he is, Mr. Mom. And we're going to bring you the Gator Nation Game Day preview from the official headquarters of the Gator Nation, Emerson Alumni Hall at the University of Florida, a place we used to do radio shows sometimes from here. And I think it was kind of weird to walk in here again and remember that.
It's a cool setup, though.
It is.
And like we were saying earlier, Game Day is great.
Oh, it's just crazy here. It's wild. But we're going to talk about what this year is going to look like for Florida football. We'll talk about all the games, all the individual games. And, Robbie, one thing I wanted to bring up to you, because when I knew we were doing this, I kind of looked it up because I was curious, and I counted 26 players are from the transfer portal that play for Florida now. I mean, that includes the Graham Mertzes of the world, you know.
Well, Pat, he's done a great job with the portal and with transfers and combined with good recruiting. And you look at the roster now. Impact players on offense are all transfers, a lot of them. Mertz, Montrell Johnson was a transfer.
Yep.
And then you're starting
got a couple receivers.
Yeah, and you're starting left tackle Brandon Crenshaw Dixon.
Yeah.
And then you're starting left guard from Alabama, George, who's moved from tackle. So
yeah.
And you look on defense, same thing. 4 or 5 guys that are your impact players came through the portal or through transfers. So, and then the others are good recruiting, like Shamar James at linebacker. And so he's done a good job of building the roster.
And that's a combination you almost have to have. And I know that Dabo doesn't agree with us on this, but
that's why he's falling behind.
It's right. But you need to have a combination of recruiting. You can't have one or the other. You can't do what Deion did. That's why they went 4-8 and 1-8 over their last 9 games. But you've got to have a combination of recruiting, and the portal's got to help you. You've got to be able to fill in.
Pat, the portal is like supplemental insurance. Whatever you lose or didn't get recruiting, you go through the portal and fill your needs. And he's done, I think, a great job of doing that. I think we're going to see that this year, that the portal is going to be a big part of this team, kind of like it was for FSU last year.
It was. It was a big part, and in fact, I think that's going to be part of FSU's problem this year is they're starting all over, basically. Now, they still are going to have a good team. We'll get to them in a little bit. We don't like to talk about them too much here, especially in the
Gator fans don't want to hear too much
in the hollowed hallways of Emerson Alumni Hall. We can't talk about them too much. There's no doubt about it. But we're going to give you a look at how they're going to fare this season. And one thing that everybody – and I get the question all the time, and I'm like, oh, Billy on the hot seat and everything. And I always tell people, Robbie – there is a perceived hot seat and a real hot seat. Yeah. The perceived hot seat is when the fans and the media, especially, the media has been all over Billy all summer with nothing going on.
I know, the national media especially, perception is unreal. But you look at the Gator fans, they sold out last year, they're going to sell out this year. They have not put him on the hot seat, I don't think. I think they're still encouraged by what could happen and the fact that he's done a good job of building the foundation.
Right.
But now you got to start winning. But I think and you and I have talked before, last year was like year 1 for him because the first year was a total rebuild job. So this is like year 2. That's usually when you see a bump. So hopefully, maybe he'll experience that, and if he does, everything will be fine.
Yeah, and I mean, he the funny thing is he kind of took a chance on trying to save a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
And when I say save, I'm not saying they were bad kids, but there was a way he wanted them to do it, and they weren't going to. And after a full year with them, a full season, he went, well, they're just not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, he has his mind or perception of what a culture should be. They didn't fit in, but I think now you talk to the players and listen to them at media day, they've bought into what he's doing. So that's a big part of it. They've accepted the culture, and they trust that he's building the program the right way. So that alone is a big positive going into the year.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, he has talked about it, about how he feels like they're the best suited they've been since they got here, obviously. Yeah. We believe they have the best roster, but is it a good enough roster? That is going to be the question that we can't help but have. Like, I've lived my whole life in Florida, but maybe I should have been born in Missouri because you got to show it to me.
You do.
You know, I mean, Robbie, we talk about it on, and I'll talk about the defense here a little bit because to me, Florida can't be any good without a good defense, not a great defense. They don't have to be great.
It's got to be good.
You can't be historically bad.
Yeah.
And that's what they've been the last 3 years.
Yeah, but now you look at the roster, Pat, I think it's a lot more talented, and I think it's a lot deeper. And now you bring in Ron Roberts from Auburn,
right,
who I think is going to add a lot. and to the defense, and I think they're going to play aggressive and attack people. And I just think they've got better players and more of them right now on defense. So there's a reason to feel hopeful about that side of the ball. When last year you didn't really feel that going into the year.
Yeah, and they also defensively get Justice Boone back after missing all last year.
And Jack Pyburn's back after his injury.
Yeah. They also Shamar James.
He's
of course,
back.
The big part of the year. And don't forget, Shamar James doesn't get hurt on the turf, and they wouldn't have beaten Georgia, but they probably would have beaten Missouri.
Yeah, no doubt.
So that's part of it. They also have added so many good players on defense,
like
as well.
Grayson Howard, the linebacker. I mean, he's going to be. Based on the spring, he's going to be an impact guy.
I mean, I think he'll start opening day. Against Miami. And then Joey Slackman, they love him. I mean, I'm always a little bit leery about guys that played at a lower level. But I will say this. You can't think of that many transfer guys that he's brought in that haven't worked out. I mean, there's a couple that haven't.
But for the most part, he's hit on them. And apparently Slackman's been a great leader in the workouts and also I think he's been a great addition.
Absolutely.
We're going to be.
But the thing is, they're going to have to be better on defense in just the ways that you and I look at stats. Okay, just in the fact that they had 3 interceptions last year.
Yeah, that's not Florida football or Florida defense.
That's not even Buell's football. I mean, 3 interceptions accidentally in 12 games. You got to get 4. But,
and then fumbles. They weren't getting a lot of those.
They don't get turnovers, and that's everybody who talks about Florida. And when somebody gets high on them, I noticed at SEC Media Days, somebody would also come back and go, yeah, but they don't create turnovers.
Yeah.
And that's what they have not done. Now they've got to do it. Guys like Jason Marshall can't have like 2 career interceptions when he leaves here. I mean, they've got to make plays. They got to react to the ball better. They got to go up and get the ball. They've got to be put in position. And this is where they've made a lot of changes on the defensive staff, Robbie, as you know.
Yeah.
Bringing in Will Harris to be coach the secondary, bringing in Gerald Chapman on the defensive line, bringing in, as you mentioned, Ron Roberts, who they think is going to make a huge difference on the defense.
Yeah, they do. And I think, Pat, you've got better players, more of them. They're going to be more comfortable in what they're doing. And that's when you make plays, when you're flying around. You don't have to think about what you're doing. You're just reacting. I think they're going to be in a position to do more of that than what they were last year.
You know, Robbie, it's kind of like that line in Bull Durham where he says, don't think you'll just hurt the ball club. And in,
that's exactly right.
And in football and on defense, I mean, offense, you better be thinking about defense. You have to be able to react to what you've seen on tape a million times. I remember guys like Tease Tabor and Quincy Wilson that were great defensive backs for Florida used to tell us all the time that they had done the hard part. That the easy part was because they knew where the ball was going to go.
You're in the film room all the time, and you know what's going to happen. So,
and that's what they've got to get. They got to get guys that can do that and create some turnovers and hit somebody and knock the ball loose once in a while instead of kind of arm tackling.
Yeah.
So, and again, this is where not only the infusion of new coaches, hopefully that will lead to them having be put in better position, but also an ability for them to learn from something else, learn something new. I think it'll be a big difference because, look, they got rid of those coaches at the positions we knew they weren't good at.
Yeah, they were not producing at all, and it doesn't surprise me that they made those. And, you talk about defense, Pat, you got to start up front.
Yeah.
If you can't control the line of scrimmage, you're going to get controlled, and that's kind of what happened last year too many times.
Yeah, they got a lot of guys that they seem to like that we haven't even like George Gum is a guy that coming off the edge.
He keeps
they like.
mentioning him. So
freshman,
came from Northern Illinois.
Yeah, no, that's right. He came from Northern Illinois. He's one of the 26 transfers. Yeah, there's a lot of guys though that they need to make a difference. I mean, everybody wants to talk about Billy Napier, the play caller. Billy Napier, the play caller, is not the problem. We know that. They had a good offense last year, and they could be a great offense this year if they can figure out how to work that quarterback switch every once in a while.
And if they can protect a little bit better too. But you look at the defensive line, Pat. All these young guys that played last year are now veterans. Searcy and all those guys that played, and
Tyreek Sapp.
Yeah. So then you throw in these young guys that have come on, and they're going to get playing time.
You can rotate them.
Yeah, you're going to be fresh on the defensive front.
Yeah.
And I think linebacker they've upgraded too. I mean, the addition of the South Carolina kid. Was huge.
Howard,
he said he's probably going to start.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. They have done a good job of doing that in the portal. And now offensively, we've talked about it. I mean, there gets a couple of portal receivers that'll hopefully help them. I don't know that anybody's going to have the impact that Ricky Pearsall had on last year's team.
He had a huge.
He was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to make a catch like he made.
No,
either.
Not here or anywhere else.
No, exactly.
But I think they've got good numbers. I think they've got good talent and speed. Not a lot of experience, but they've got guys that are potential that can, the group should be better than it was last year. You're not going to have maybe the superstar, but overall the group should be really good.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully this offensive line, you mentioned Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon, who transferred in, but the rest of the guys they've got on that offensive line all played last year, all played a lot. In fact, Jake Slaughter was a little bit of a surprise how not only that he had to play as much as he did.
But now he's become a potentially dominant player. And then the great thing about Dixon, now you can move George out
to guard,
from left tackle to guard, where
Yeah.
he's much better suited. And I think that really strengthens the left side of the line,
Yeah.
which is huge.
George just wasn't a tackle.
No, he's a really big, talented guy, but he wasn't
Yeah.
quick enough. And now he's in a position where he can, excel.
And we'll see how all that works. Again, a lot of it has to do also with what they've done during the offseason. And look, anybody who's ever been to an SEC media days knows that every coach says we've worked harder than we've ever worked before, and this is the best.
Whether you're Vanderbilt or Alabama,
Vanderbilt,
it's the same.
Tennessee, Auburn, they all say, our guys have gone to, in the weight room and everything. But, hey, at least Florida is saying that.
Yeah.
I mean,
but you know what? One thing Napier said that you don't hear is he said we look different now.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me says
true,
a lot,
yeah.
that they look different.
Well,
and he mentioned that he goes there on a Saturday, their players off, and then they're working out, which means they've bought in, they want to get better, and I think that's all part of the culture.
Like those old Urban Meyer workouts at midnight, because he knew that's when you guys want to go out and drink. Instead, you're going to come in here and work
out. And then early the next day.
Yeah.
So he would test you.
I don't know if you could get away with what he got away with back then. But
no, probably not.
So anyway, we'll see how it all works out offensively. I mean, they've got some talented tight ends, Hansen and Boardingham, and they've got some guys there that maybe can do
Zipper
something.
should be back, Pat. I would think, and he was really showing signs before he got hurt.
Yeah,
so.
I mean they've got I don't know that they have an elite weapon. Of course, we haven't even mentioned the guy who is their elite weapon, which is Trey Wilson, who has been kind of was a surprise last year. We were wondering which of those three freshmen would emerge, and he was the guy.
Yeah.
There's no question about
it.
it.
And he could be the big-time guy this year, Pat. I mean, look at what he did last year. I mean, he was the go-to guy in the Georgia game. He got him off to that great start. And, I mean, you look at the guys on him, and he's got guys around him that can play, I think, some fast guys. I think a guy to look out for is Andy Jean, who flashed a little bit last year, and he got some injuries. But I think he's going to be a potential big-timer, too. So it's just guys that have to prove themselves on the field.
Yeah, again.
They haven't done it yet. They have to prove themselves.
And there's a lot of guys that way. And the guys who don't have to prove themselves, but a group that has to prove themselves is special teams. Now, Florida's got a good kicker and a good punter, but I mean,
there were lapses last year, big lapses.
Yeah, but there are just too many mistakes, too many stupid things. It started with the first game, two number threes on the field. In the last game they played, they had same numbers on the field. The rest just didn't catch it.
Yeah,
but they did, and I mean, it's just. They've got to be more organized. They've got to do a better job.
Yeah.
They've got to – how about winning special teams for once? They never do. I mean, the best they can hope for is a tie.
Yeah. And, you look at the Arkansas game, that 5-yard penalty cost them the game. Because once you penalize a kicker 5 yards, it's in his head, then boom, he doesn't make it. He doesn't make it, they go to overtime and lose. So 5-yard penalty costs them a game.
And that's where we need to see it. And we need to see Florida break some plays on special teams.
Yeah.
A kickoff return. I remember – Andre DeBose. I remember those days when
Brandon James,
probably one of the biggest difference makers ever at Florida.
Yeah, Jarvis Moss blocking a field goal. Look, where has that been?
If special teams is a third of the game, which coaches tell you, then make it a third of the game.
Yeah,
you may have thought you made it a third of the game the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But you didn't.
They're saying it now, and we'll see.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll see.
They've got good kickers, they've got good athletes, but until you go out and execute properly, we're not going to know.
Yeah, and so we'll see how it all goes for Billy Napier. And again, we're going to do a breakdown of all the games on the schedule going forward here. But when you think about this season, it's hard not to see a guy who does have some heat on him. Now, every coach will tell you, I put more heat on myself. I put more pressure on myself than anybody does. and nobody believes that because we're putting pressure on you right now. But look, when we talk about the record he has to have, I mentioned this earlier, Robbie. When we would talk about Napier and his future and everything, guys would always bring up, well, they've got a new president there. I said, well, not anymore.
No.
So now they got a new president, and obviously Kent Fox isn't going to make a move like this.
No.
And he likes Billy and he likes Scott Strickland, and so it'll probably take a year before they get a new president in there. And
the thing is, too, Pat, you talk to people in the building, they like Napier too. They think he's doing a great job of building the program. So,
and what he is doing with everything off the field is different level. It's better than any coach has ever done here. However, you got to win.
Got to win games
on the field.
But you talk about the schedule, Pat, and I think if you're a player, if you're a coach, you welcome that kind of schedule.
Oh yeah.
You want to play good teams. I think that motivates you to do well motivates you in the off season more than anything to get ready for these games. And you don't want to play crappy teams. You want to play good teams.
No.
And that's what Florida's going to be doing all year.
They are, and they also have a schedule that only has one breather, and the one breather scored 52 points on them in the first half.
I know.
Last time they played here in Samford. So
Dan Mullen was dancing in the locker room afterward.
Yeah, that wasn't a good look.
That was not a good day.
That may have been the beginning of the end for him.
I think it was too.
Okay, well, let's look at the schedule, and everybody's been talking about the schedule. I did a thing for Gators Wire this summer where I pointed out that last year's schedule was harder if you look at it game by game. For example, we go to the first game, a 3:30 game in the Swamp, Florida, Miami. Would you rather play in the Swamp against Miami or on the road against Utah?
Yeah. I remember you broke it down on the radio too with me, and I agreed with you that the schedule last year was harder.
Yeah, but
for one thing, 7 home games this year.
Yeah,
okay?
7 home games, and obviously it starts with this first game against Miami. Let me tell you what, I've said this before, and I don't know how many people really believe that I believe this or believe that I'm right. And that is that nobody hates Florida more than Miami fans.
Nobody. They've always have. Yeah, I agree.
And believe me, we have a long history. I go back to the Carlos Alvarez telling me the story about when he went to the Charlie Tate's office for his interview. When he was a high school
being
player.
Recruited. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had a gator hanging by a noose in the locker room or in the coach's office, and he goes, I think I want to go to Florida. If you feel that way about it, I don't know if I want to. So he went to Florida and was an All-American.
I think a few years later in his senior year, they did the Gator flop and the
Gator flop,
and that really drove it. Yeah.
Really, and then there was also, remember that game in '75 where Henry Davis returned a punt, but they said his knee touched the ground, and that bothered them forever too. They are convinced.
Yeah, even though they don't play, they hate Florida.
They hate them. But they've done a great job. We talked about before about how Billy's done a good job with recruiting in the portal combined. They have too. They've done they've got a bunch of course. They got a new quarterback.
Yeah, Cam Ward, who's going to be a real problem.
But they've got good players now. Coaching, I haven't seen anything. Again, we talk about show me. Mario Cristobal is going to have to show me something too. Yeah.
But somehow he's gotten himself off the hot seat without doing anything.
Yeah,
whereas
they're bringing in guys through the NIL and everything. Yeah. But if he goes out and lays a bunch of eggs this year, he's going to be right back on it. So.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Napier last year. If they beat Missouri and Arkansas, which they should have won both games, there's no talk of the hot seat. But it is what it is. They lost those games, so he comes in the year perceived on the hot seat. And this is a huge game for him and his program. And I'm not saying must win in the first game, but it's big.
Pretty important.
It's very important.
I mean, if they lose, you're going to hear the noise get ratcheted up.
Oh, yeah.
And, again, a lot of it is just fan noise, but a lot of it's media noise. But it is going to be legitimate noise, I think, if they lose. Especially if they go out and do the same kind of things. Yeah.
Fans have been very patient, Pat, but I don't know how long that's going to last. If it continues on the current trend. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What if they lost the game because they had 2 number 11s on the field?
Well, then people are going to implode.
That'll be the end of it.
A meltdown.
It's not going to work if that happens.
No.
So, but here's the thing. There's a lot of history that we'll talk about with Florida, Miami going. We just talked about it a little bit. None of the history matters. But they need to win this game. They need to find a way to go out there.
It's an important game.
Take advantage of home field, okay? This isn't going to be like the FSU game last year where they sold it out, but there was a lot of FSU fans.
Yeah.
Florida fans, opening game of the season, they're gonna buy the tickets. So that'll be a lot of fun. And again, on August opener, so August 31st.
Going to be a hot one in the swamp.
A little warm. Hey, you know what? Can't take it. Stay home and watch it on TV. That's probably what I'll do.
Yeah. I'll probably be with you.
All right, game 2 on the season for Florida, playing the mighty Samford Bulldogs, the home of.
Which, like we said the last time we were here, they scored what? How many points the first half?
I thought it was 52 or 51 the first half because I remember watching the game.
They were unstoppable.
They couldn't stop, and then they stopped them in the second half. But they ran back a kickoff for a touchdown, it was crazy. And again, that Florida team had kind of quit a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we found out they'd really quit later on.
Oh, they had,
year. But, so Samford will come in here. They're not anything special going into this year, but they're a good, solid team. You could have a little bit of that sandwich game possibility, Robbie.
The letdown for the fans and the players. But my thing is, Pat, you wait all year for football if you're a fan. This is another opportunity to tailgate and have fun and go to the game and cheer your team. I think you got to look at it that way, not, it's not going to be a great game, I'm not going to go. So Gator fans need to keep showing up for all these games. Because at home field is everything this year, and that means every game, every home game.
9 sellouts in the last 2 years for a team that hadn't had a winning record. So they've done
show up for this game.
Yeah, and I think they will. Florida just needs to take care of business in a game like this. But, the sandwich possibility is there with the Miami game and then the A&M game being right behind it. And they're all
like you said, either win or lose the Miami game. The natural tendency to have a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah.
The next game if you're playing a team like this. But you got to avoid that. That comes through coaching and culture.
It does. Urban Meyer used to call them stat games.
Yeah.
And then they go out and play like they were trying to get stats sometimes. But, I think that, they'll have – that is going to be a good culture test for this team.
It is, no doubt.
After the Miami game, no matter what happens, how do you respond to it? Do you go out there and play at the level you need to play? And this, again, is an opportunity to do some fun things and have some fun out there. And like you said, Robbie, everybody's playing – every one of these players is playing because they love the game. And what they, I think, have been able to find is instead of guys who love being football players – they're finding guys who love to play football.
Yeah.
Instead of the guys that love to go somewhere and get free drinks. Which you can do now in NIL, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we're giving you an NIL, this shot of Fireball.
Yeah. Another thing, Pat, in a game like this, Florida's got a lot of young players that are going to want to play. So that's going to be an opportunity for them, you would think. So another reason to get fired up for the game.
And it's a night game.
Yeah.
And I think people will be ready for a night game.
Oh, yeah.
Even though 7 o'clock, so it'll be mostly dark.
It's like somewhat dark.
It's like the George Carlin thing where you do the weather and you go, the hippy-dippy weatherman. Tonight's forecast, dark. Scattered light in the morning.
Fearless forecast, that would be.
All right, so that will be game 2. Okay, week 3 is Florida against Texas A&M, and
the real season begins.
Yeah, it really does. Conference season, and of course, that game in itself, a lot will have depended on what's happened the first 2 games. But certainly for Florida playing Texas A&M, we just saw them play 2 years ago. It's so
that was
weird.
A good win for Florida.
It
2
was,
years ago on the road.
It's weird how Georgia still hadn't been there, but. Florida ends up playing them all the time. I know. It's weird. But
A&M, they've got a new coach. But they remind me of LSU in a lot of ways that they're always a talented roster no matter the coach, no matter the year. And I think they're going to be a really talented roster again and a very capable football team. So you got to watch out for this.
Yeah, don't forget they had the number 1 class a couple of years ago in America. They did lose a lot of that.
Probably over half.
In the portal, because of Jimbo, our favorite coach, getting fired. I know who was happy, the stenographers at the SEC Media Days. Yeah, they were like, thank God we don't have to listen to that guy.
He was hard to quote.
When you would get Orgeron and Jimbo back-to-back, that would be too much.
Drive you to drink.
Yep. Well, and it did. I saw him in there doing shots. But, look, Mike Elko's a really good coach. I like him a lot. He's been there. He knows the culture. He was a defensive coordinator there. They were better on defense then. And he's done a good job of using the portal to kind of save this first season. However, games in Gainesville, I think Florida will take the Swamp to its highest level,
These are big games, but games you think that they should win, and they should. They should win this game.
Yes, they should win this game.
That's the feeling you have going into it.
Now, I will say this. Texas A&M has got a kind of team that could be they're like an X Factor team.
Yeah, they're capable. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, they've got – the quarterback, Wigman, I'm not sold on him yet. And he's going to be their guy, Connor Wigman. And they still have some good players, but they just lost so much in the portal. That's why you've got to win that game at home. It's a 3:30 game. It'll be hot, I know, but they're used to the heat. It's hotter out there, I think, sometimes. But they've got to find a way to beat Texas A&M.
Yeah, if you want to get A&M, you got to get them early.
Yeah,
because he's going to build a pretty good program.
Exactly, but that's something we've talked about is how the first half of the season, Florida needs to be at minimum 5-1.
Yeah.
So, and that would be one of the games you can't lose.
Can't lose that one.
All right, next up, Mississippi State in the lovely village of Starkville, where Robbie and I have had some fun there because we never stay there.
But there's nowhere to stay there.
Yeah, there's nowhere to stay. So, we stay, what's
Columbus,
Mississippi, and they have a great steakhouse there.
They do.
It's all they have there is a steakhouse and a Days Inn.
That's all you need.
That's, I think, the day that I decided I wanted to retire from the newspaper was when we were sitting in a getting ready to leave to go to the airport at 3 a.m. because there's only 2 flights out of Starkville, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m.
It's not good.
Now, that's the famous where we were getting ready to leave many, many years ago, and the person had their walkie-talkie on the counter, and all of a sudden they're looking at my ticket. This is back when you had paper tickets. And she just comes on, and the guy comes on the air and says, "This plane is broke."
It's not what you want to hear when you get ready to board a plane.
We're not going anywhere for a while. And there's no TVs in the Starkville Airport or whatever you want to call it, the Golden Triangle.
Yeah, there's really nothing there.
But anyway, but look, that was a bad decision they made last year. Obviously they're all in shock. Mike Leach passing away, and of course I love Mike Leach.
That was awful.
Terrible thing to happen. But to replace him, with the guy who was already there, was the interim coach, and didn't have anything.
No charisma,
no pizzazz.
It was a terrible hire.
You went from pizzazz to dull. You went from Andy Griffith to Don Knotts, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so obviously they got rid of him after a year. They had a terrible year. And they bring in Jeff Lebby, who I think is a pretty good offensive coach.
He's a great, really good offensive coach. So they get back to doing what they were doing under Leach a little bit in terms of throwing the ball around.
Right.
But again, it's going to be his first year with a whole new system. This is a road game that Florida's got to feel good about going into. 7 home games, you hope to win those. Then you need to win 1 or 2 on the road. And this is one that you look at and think it's doable.
Yeah, and again, last time we were there, Robbie and I wore headsets because it was so loud. And
that was a night game.
Scott Strickland had warned us that all the sound goes into the press box.
And it did.
And it was unbelievable. It was like hurting our ears.
And those fans wanted to beat Mullen so bad.
They did.
In that game.
They did not succeed, though. They threw that who was the guy Donovan Steiner, threw that safety blitz at him. That was a great call.
He got back there in a hurry.
He did. That was fun. But hey, look, you're on the road in the SEC. This is one thing we talk about with the SEC, what makes the SEC so good. Going on the road, it ain't like going into some of these little stadiums in the Big 12. It's like going to Kansas or somewhere like that.
Yeah, even though Kansas has gotten better.
They've gotten better, but the stadium's not real
Florida
big.
learned this lesson 2 years ago and went to Vanderbilt and lost that game.
Yes, exactly.
That all adds to the hot seat type of thing when you do that.
But, that's the thing. When you lose games on the road, you kind of try to figure out why. And, I remember Urban used to change the butter that they were using in the pregame meal and stuff like that. He would try to find all these little things.
Always looking for an edge.
Why are we not succeeding? I know one year he talked about bringing all the food over from Gainesville to go to Tallahassee because he was afraid they were going to poison him. So
add paranoia to the list of things there.
He was Rasputin. All right, so Florida needs to get that win, and again, that'll be their first road game, and playing on the road is never easy.
No.
All right, next up for the Gators, Mighty Gators will be coming back home and playing UCF. And this is a series that I personally wish they had not scheduled.
Yeah.
Just because there was so much acrimony going on there about, oh, we deserve to be able to play you guys home and home, and Florida saying, no, you don't.
You're not on the same level.
You're not on the same level. Now UCF's in a real conference, I guess. And I'm sure they're going to come in here with a lot of,
well, yeah,
fire.
They beat Florida in that bowl game. I know that Florida was kind of depleted, but to them it's a huge win for their program. But if you want to get on the hot seat, lose to UCF at home. That's one way to put yourself on the hot seat.
It's funny because Malzahn really hasn't been that successful there. I mean,
no.
I know they beat Florida, but Florida, had a lot of guys that didn't play and everything, and they weren't into the game. And it's no excuse. I'm not making excuses for them. But they keep going through quarterbacks. Feels like a quarterback goes there every year and starts all new. So we'll see how it goes for them going.
They've got talent, no doubt about it. They've got a good scheme. So it'll be a test, no question about it.
I mean, and that's the other thing is you have played some of these big games. You've maybe gone on the road and beat Mississippi State. It'll be an evening game. We don't know if it's going to be night or 6 o'clock yet. But it'll be an evening game, and the crowd will be lubed and ready to go. So that's what especially night games, Robbie, I think when they're playing at home, all you got to do is give the people a reason to stay fired up.
Yeah.
Instead of giving them a reason to go, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
And that's what they got to do. They've got to do that. And if they can get through that game, that will be if they can get through that part of the season, they should be fine.
And the thing is, too, Pat, UCF, I guarantee you their fans all throughout the year have been trying to find ways to get tickets. They're going to want to put a lot of fans, or their own fans, in the stands somehow. So Florida fans need to hang on to their tickets.
They do.
Don't sell them.
All right, next up for the Gators, I wrote about this summer about how I think this is the biggest game on Florida's schedule. Now, a lot of people tell you Miami.
Yeah.
Some people say Georgia, which – that's kind of
depends.
A cliche. Yeah, you don't know how big the Georgia game. But they're going to Knoxville, and that is always a tough place to play. But those Urban Meyer teams never had a problem playing there. What do you go, 6-0 against them?
Spurrier only lost once up there.
Spurrier lost once up there, yeah. Well, twice 90 and 92, yeah. So, look, it's a tough road to hoe, and this is where the schedule starts to really beef up.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder now.
Like having to play Miami and UCF and Mississippi State on the road is not already hard. It starts to get really hard with this game, especially with the Vols, because the Vols – well, now, again, we have no idea about their quarterback situation.
Just that they love him a lot.
Yeah, they do.
And we'll see. All you know.
We've only seen a little bit of him, so we'll see how he does in that. But – there's no question that they have done a great job with the NIL, and they have brought in a lot of good talent, a lot of good players. They've killed it in recruiting, but they more have killed it with the portal. They've done a good job of putting together a roster. We talk about Billy putting together a roster, but Josh Heupel has put together a really nice roster, and if he can kind of get this game, is going to be it's a bigger game for them than it is for Florida.
Well, yeah, because Heupel has to win that home game.
Yeah.
So Florida's playing with, should play loose and easy in that game. But, Tennessee.
Which they did, remember, 2 years ago. They went up there and said, we're going for every fourth down. We're going to throw the ball over the
they had a
place.
chance to win at the end, but didn't quite pull it off. But, after losing in the swamp again last year, Tennessee's going to want this game in a big way. So you have to deal with that.
It's still amazing that Florida's – when we talk about Florida win streaks, and the one against Kentucky was the one that was at 31 and ended up being before it ended. Vanderbilt was a long one, all this. But Florida's streak against Tennessee is amazing. To have lost so seldomly.
To a team that is a quality team like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that one year that they said you can't pull a duck or whatever, they lost that year up there. Yeah. And their fans were leaving at halftime because they were losing. But they're going to be psyched up for this game, especially depending on what happens for Tennessee going forward, going through the early part of their schedule. So it's going to be an exciting game, and I think that they haven't set the time on it yet. They will in the next it'll probably be they may do a 6-day out thing with that game.
Could be, yeah.
But hey, look, Florida Tennessee, some of my favorite memories.
No, it's a great rivalry. I mean, They didn't play a whole lot before they went to divisions. So, but once they went to divisions and Spurrier was kicking their butt every year, it got bigger and bigger. So to me, it's still a big rivalry.
I remember one year they sent me up there, and for the whole week, I went up there on Sunday, and they said just do a bunch of stories. And Peyton Manning was there, and Peyton was great. He's really a good guy.
Yeah, he is.
Talked to him a lot. We had some one-on-ones with him. Had a one-on-one with Fulmer. He didn't know about it. He was mad about it. But I wrote this one story where I talked to a bunch of their fans about how much they hate Spurrier. And Spurrier read the story, and he goes, "What, you find people under the bridge to write that story?" I'm like, no, Coach. I just talked to fans. But I remember after the game, that's the game where it rained and everything.
Yeah.
Florida got up to the big lead. Florida beat. It was like I told Robbie before it was we had to turn the radio off going to the game because I was sick of hearing about it.
It was obnoxious, really.
It really was. But after the game, I remember Jeff Mitchell pointing at me going, "I need to talk to you because you got me so fired up for this game. All this stuff you wrote all week." I go, "That was my point. That was the whole idea behind it." And it wasn't. But anyway, so Florida-Tennessee will be a huge game. Now, a lot will depend on what both teams do going in, where it's going to be. But we'll see what happens. But
yeah, and it will be a really big test for the defense too, because Heupel, when he has a good quarterback, you see what he can do. So it'll be a big test.
It's not a complicated offense, but it works. He basically takes one side of the field and says that's where you're going to go with it. So when you call the play, you know that there's 3 guys running the pattern here and figure out. So it's not hard to learn. But it is hard to defend, so we'll see.
But what helps Florida in a game like this is you look at Florida's secondary now. They're loaded with a bunch of young, talented guys and some guys that are experienced. So that's going to be a strength on the defense, I think, the secondary, and they'll be tested.
I mean, when you look at Jason Marshall Jr., obviously coming back, when you look at Asa Turner, getting him from Washington, that was a big get.
Yeah, he's going to be an instant starter, safe, you would think.
Yeah.
And then Jordan Castell.
Jordan Castell, yeah. I mean,
he played great last year as a true freshman. Now, he's going to have a breakout year this year, you would think.
But the problem they had last year was that they had so many freshmen playing back there, and now those guys are all sophomores, and it does make a difference. And you add in some veteran leaderships. In fact, I talked to Brandon Spikes a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying he could not believe the new guys coming in that are older players, but they're the transfer portal guys, the amount of leadership they're showing. And he said it's making him excited.
Yeah, it makes a difference back there, no doubt.
So if you can get that win, if you go to Knoxville and win, you're going to be loved forever.
Yeah, and you're not going to be on the hot seat.
That's right.
Trust me.
Okay, next up for the Gators, the mighty Wildcats from Kentucky, where Mark Stoops has taken that program and done great things with them, but not exceptional things.
Yeah.
I mean, he gets them to win, but he just can't seem to get over that.
But, one of the big things he's done is beat Florida.
Oh, yes.
So
3 out of the last 5.
To me, this is a must-win game for Florida because you're talking about you've got to win your home games.
And
but you've also got to beat Kentucky at home, a team that has owned you the last couple of years. I know. So they got to turn that around.
Think about that, though, and this is what maybe why a lot of people talk about this schedule. Sometimes it's not who you play, it's when you play them.
Yeah.
Florida playing Kentucky the week after they play at Tennessee, they could be banged up. They could be, dealing with depression. We'll see. But Kentucky has, they've changed quarterbacks. They thought Devin Leary was going to be a great fit last year. He was not a good fit at all. I asked Robbie once time last year, I go, is Devin Leary the worst quarterback to ever beat Florida?
I think he was.
I think he might have been.
But when you got a running back rushing for 280, 90 yards, you don't need a good quarterback.
And never did anything like that
Yeah,
again.
never came close.
Never came close to any of those kind of yards, and that showed you.
That was a low point last year.
It was, and it showed
really
you what kind of defense they were playing.
So Florida needs to be highly motivated to win this game and make kind of a statement that, you're Kentucky and we're Florida still.
If I was Billy Napier, I would just run a clip of Ray Davis running plays in the locker room the whole week of that game.
And then his quotes after the game about how soft Florida was.
Yeah, Florida was soft.
Yeah,
and, hey, they were.
They were. No doubt about it.
Hopefully they aren't anymore. But, Kentucky's got a good team. I mean, they're going to be solid. I don't think they're going to be exceptional. They got another new quarterback, so we'll see what happens there. But they have certainly talent, and they've got a new offensive coordinator. They go through those things like
they do.
It's unbelievable. So By this time, we know more about Kentucky, but you never know. All right, next up, the annual world's largest outdoor cocktail party, and
we're always going to call
always going to call it that because my friend Bill Costells gave it that name many years ago. He's long gone, of course, but I worked with him, and for those of you who don't know, the story is that he saw some drunk after the game come up to a cop and offer him a drink, and he said, "This is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party."
It really is.
And it is. I mean, I don't see many people drinking inside. They're all drinking outside. But
it's a great tailgate atmosphere.
It is.
That game is.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't leave, but I think when it does leave, when the Jaguars do their stadium renovation, it may not come back. And they may see how much more money they can make.
Being home and home.
Yeah, or even being Atlanta, Orlando, stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But we know they're playing in Jacksonville this year, and we know it'll be at 3:30 as it always is. Certainly, Georgia has put together another great roster. They've
got the Heisman leading quarterback, probably.
Got the Heisman quarterback. Got Trevor Etienne out of Florida.
To me, that was a big pickup for them, Pat.
It was.
I mean, I think Florida's going to be fine. Yeah,
they lost a lot. Yeah.
But he's a guy that can be an elite player, and he's going to be playing behind a really good line with a good quarterback.
Right.
So,
no, I think, and again, they're paying him $60,000 a month.
Yeah,
so that helps you when they're going to give you that kind of money. The thing about this Florida Georgia game to me is Florida needs. I mean, obviously, they've only gotten the one win in the last few years, the one that Mullen got, and that turned out to be the worst thing that could have happened to him.
Yeah, true.
But, Napier understands this rivalry. He understands how important it is. The players understand it, and they need to go out and play it that way. I mean, just play it at a high level every play instead of just kind of going through the motions at times.
In these first 2 years, Pat, they've gone through long stretches where they're very competitive.
Yeah.
Like they're playing on an even keel with Georgia and making plays, and then they'll go and disappear there for a while.
Yeah.
And like you say, you can't do that. If you're playing a team that is talented as Georgia, you have to be on top of your game the whole 60 minutes or you're not going to win. But it's promising that they have been able to compete against them for long periods of time in these games.
Yeah, they really thought they should have won the game the year before. And look, that was the year that, remember, they couldn't get the wristbands. They were all screwed up.
Yeah.
Everybody had the wrong place on.
Not a good way to start.
No, not a good way to start. But look, Georgia's got a really good team. There's no doubt about it. One reason I'm not picking Georgia to win the East.
There is
we
no
don't
East.
have an East anymore. There are no directions in this country. No North, no South. But to win the SEC is because of who they play, and they have to go on the road to play at Texas, at Ole Miss, who I think is going to be really good this year, and at Alabama. So I think they'll get in the playoffs. I think at the bottom end of the playoffs. That's my gut is they're going to lose 2 games. Now, if Florida can step up there and stun them, heck, they may not make the playoffs.
But I think Florida can compete.
It's definitely possible.
And I think this is a good chance. You can see where your program is now in year 3 when you go up and see compare it to Kirby Smart. You'll have a good barometer as to where you're at.
And it'll be so much different than it was with Mullen, because with Mullen, when he won in year 3, he kind of took the attitude of, hey, I've done everything I can do here. I don't need to recruit.
Well, that's when he brought it up for the first time. We don't need to recruit.
Yeah, we
right
recruit
now.
later. Yeah, we recruit later, and that was not a good look. There was a lot of things that weren't a good look about.
In a conference where recruiting is so huge, he was a bad choice.
But Napier's not going to do that.
No,
Napier instead is going to go, okay, let's build on this momentum.
Yeah.
And that's what Florida's got to do this entire season, is build on wins.
They need to get momentum and then build on it and keep that. That's going to keep his job secure, and people will be excited about the future. It's got to show improvement over the course of the year.
The hard part is to get momentum. The harder part is to build it.
Yeah.
It's just like coaches say, the hard thing is to win a national title. The harder thing is to win another.
To stay on top, yeah.
To stay on top. Okay, next up for the Mighty Gators is a trip to Austin, which I wish I was taking. Maybe I still will. Karen has talked about it. We've been there a couple of times. In fact, I don't know if you knew this or not, Robbie, but for my 50th birthday, Karen took me to Austin for a game.
I don't know if you know this, but I know it. I know that. I remember that.
Anyway, we had a good time. It was really nice, and we went out there again, so we've been there a couple of times. I was there for some reason I covered a Texas-Auburn football game. Why I would do that?
I have no idea.
No idea. I know we can't do this. We're not allowed to do this, right?
No, you can't.
Yeah, we're not allowed to do this. Okay?
But you can mock the Gators with the Gator
But you
song.
can do this, but not this.
Yeah.
This good, this bad. I don't understand sports. But anyway, I look at the Texas game as house money for the Gators. I think Texas is going to be the best team in the country. I really do.
They could be. But still, with the quarterback situation, Arch Manning could be the quarterback by the middle of the year because Ewers has a history of injuries, so you don't know where their quarterback situations will be by this time in the year. And you're right. This is a game where Florida is pressure free. And I think Florida has a chance to be a really tough out this year, and I think maybe Texas will find that out too. That Florida's going to be a tough out.
And that's the thing too, Robbie, is when people keep asking me and other people, are Texas and Oklahoma ready for the SEC? And I always say, oh, they're ready for it. They may not be ready for 8 games in the SEC. There's a big difference between being good enough to beat an SEC team and being good enough to hold up to an 8-game schedule, which will probably be 9 in a couple of years. But it's going to be – that part of it is going to be tough for them. Now, certainly for Florida coming off Georgia is not going to be easy for them. But let's just say they're sitting in there in a good situation, then – where they have a chance to do something. This could be the game that puts them into the playoffs. Who knows?
You don't know. But for Texas, this is going to find out it is a grind. The Big 12 wasn't a grind to them in any way, not like this is going to be. And, they beat Alabama last year in Tuscaloosa, and I think that got them really going.
That's my point.
Yeah, they could, Can you do that week in and week out?
Yeah, you're good enough to do that. Are you good enough to do it every week?
Yeah.
And that's going to be the interesting part. Because not only do you have to do it, you've got to go beat – you got to beat Florida and you got to beat Georgia. They got Georgia on their schedule at home as well. They do have a nice schedule in that way. They get a lot of games at home. But then – can you get through the playoffs?
Yeah.
Well,
the thing is, there are very few gimmies in the SEC. Really, there aren't any at all. So they're going to find that out.
And look, Texas lost a lot of great players. There's no doubt about it. Their receiver, Worthy, I can't believe the Chiefs got him. So
I know.
I'm happy with that. I like the Chiefs. So it'll be interesting to find out how that goes with them. But they have lost some good guys. But they have the NIL thing. They had the NIL thing solved the first year. It was already solved. Florida just now has solved it. But,
Texas money.
Yeah, they had, and they said, hey, we can pay these guys over the table now?
Give them everything they want.
We didn't know that. Woohoo! Horns up. So we'll see how the Gators do in that one. All right, next up, LSU, which is the first time they played I Won't Back Down was LSU, right?
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Did I? No, I don't think I did.
Yeah, LSU and then Texas A&M. They played the 2 first games. They lost both of them. And I'm like, quit playing this song then. They've won some at home since then. But LSU obviously has become a fierce rivalry game for Florida.
And a nemesis now because Florida can't find a way to beat them.
Well, we keep saying that Florida can't find a way to beat different teams, and that's just because they haven't been able to win enough games. The only team they beat all the time is Tennessee.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, how many for LSU? I think they've won 3 of the last 4 here, something like that.
Yeah.
Florida's got to take care of these guys at home.
They do.
They've got to beat these guys.
This will be a talented LSU team, but they're not going to have the all-world quarterback like they did last year. And Florida went out there last year and competed really well against LSU. Was in the game in the fourth quarter. So
and I also look at
you get them at home now. You got to take care of business here.
Got them at home. That defense last year was pathetic for them. It was like it was like watching just 2 battering rams going head to head because nobody could do anything to stop anybody. Well, that wouldn't be the right analogy. It'd be like watching 2 sieves go head to head. But it was again. He was Jaden Daniels. That's why he won the Heisman.
Well, that was a big game for him.
That game did as much for me to vote for him as anybody. And they've got good players. They always have good players. It's just you got them at home. Take care of business. You got to find a way to win this game.
That's the whole theme of the year for this team, Pat. You got to win it. The swamp has got to be your best friend.
Yeah, and you're bringing Nussmeyer, coming back to start that game. He, of course, his dad coached here.
Yeah, but he lit up Georgia in that title
did.
game a few years ago in the second half. But, of course, the game was already over at that point.
Yeah.
But they definitely love his ability, his throwing ability, but he's not going to be a threat to run like Daniels was.
No.
So.
Daniels reminded me of Kaepernick. He used to glide when he ran. Like he didn't.
Those long strides.
He didn't look like his feet were touching the ground.
Yeah. I don't think they were.
Yeah. He's a really good player. But that's the thing. Look, they're going to come in here with a bunch of big physical guys and try to run the ball. Throw it, do a lot of play action.
Yeah.
They're going to kind of go back to what LSU used to do instead of what Jaden Daniels was able to do.
Yeah, and they know they can win here because they've done it.
Yeah, that's what I would do if I was Brian Kelly. I would just show them results of the last 5 games here and maybe show them one highlight from each one. See, I'm always trying to motivate coaches. And
do you think they're really paying attention to you, though, Pat?
Not yet. Not one coach has heard one thing I've ever said. All right, next up for Florida, it's Senior Day. And Senior Day in the old days used to be, you'd bring in some directional opponent.
But you can beat and everybody's happy.
Beat them, everybody go home happy. But now Florida gets Ole Miss, which could be, who knows how high they could be ranked by then. They have put together quite he's the king of the portal.
Yeah, he is.
Doesn't really like to recruit. He'd just rather get guys through the portal. And, hey, if it works for you, it works for you. He's done it way better than Dion did it. And certainly a little bit better than Dabo's doing.
Yeah.
But he's getting good players in there. And
and his offensive system is so good, and he's got a quarterback that excels in it, and he's got receivers. They're a team that on paper is as good as anybody in the league.
Yeah, Jackson Dart is – I wasn't impressed with him at Southern Cal, but, man, I've been impressed with him. He seems like he's that kind of guy that you have to worry about, dual threat guy, a guy who can run the ball, who can run some option and stuff, and has a good arm too. And
he's a very confident kid too. That's the thing.
He is,
and he competes.
He has that stuff on his face.
Yeah, he's all ready to go.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I've said this before. I think Lane Kiffin's the best play caller in college football, and so you add that in with an experienced quarterback. Add that into all the players they brought in from the portal. It's going to be a tough game for Florida.
It is.
But it's in Gainesville. It's Senior Day. You don't want to send the seniors out losers. You want to send them out winners.
And, Pat, remember the last time Ole Miss came here, a top 10 team, Florida beat him 38-7. Was that the score?
It was
when Will
something
Greer was
like
the quarterback?
That, yes. Remember Cox had that fumble. No, somebody else. Was it T.J. Slayton got a fumble recovery?
Might have been. But, yeah, Ole Miss was a heavy favorite in that game. Florida came out and dominated.
They were. No, I think they were number 2 in the country.
Yeah,
Ole Miss going to that game. Yeah, and Florida just got a lot of turnovers. But, again, this is what we go back to.
Yeah.
Get turnovers. If
Make
you get
plays.
turnovers like you did the last time you played Ole Miss, you can beat Ole Miss again. And that's the thing. Like I always tell people, you can talk about how good your offense is, but you know what makes great offense? Turnovers.
Yeah,
because you get the ball in the 12.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, you score a lot of points.
So that maybe Florida can relive that day and not relive the other last time they came here, which was
but this is a tough game, Pat, no doubt, a tough test. But to me, it's doable. I mean, you look at Ole Miss last year at times; they barely beat Tulane on the road. They really struggled. I mean, Florida's going to be a much tougher environment, so I think it's a doable game.
Yeah, I think a lot will have to do with where Florida is at that point.
Or if they're
are they
still
playing
moving
for a bowl?
up, or
are they playing for the playoffs?
Yeah.
Or they, that has a lot to do with how they're going to play. But it'll be interesting to see what. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of uniforms they wear for that game.
That could be the all-black attire.
I don't like the all-black.
I don't know.
They don't beat anybody in all black in any sport. They lose to them in every sport. Don't wear it.
Well, the coaches aren't listening to you, Pat, so you got to change that.
I'm trying to get the coaches to start listening. Listen to me. I bet you Lane Kiffin would listen to me.
No.
Of course, the last game of the year, as always. Well, not always, because back in our time, back in the 70s, they used to be like the third or fifth game, but it's switched to. I wonder if that'll ever change.
I think it's kind of set at the end now, Pat.
Yeah, but Florida State, of course, the game in Tallahassee, never fun to go over there. And Florida actually 2 years ago went over there and played really well again offensively. But
they did.
The defense just couldn't get it done. And then Anthony Richardson threw the ball out of the end zone.
Yeah,
with the game on.
That didn't work. Didn't work out for them.
No,
yeah, they had a chance to win that game then. So
yeah, and look, FSU has got they've hit the portal hard again, but again, you got to get the right mix of guys, and nobody knows for sure if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, DJ Ungalalela is.
He has a history of being
He was
barely mediocre.
Bad at Clemson,
yeah.
Okay at Oregon. We'll see what he is at FSU.
Yeah.
But I mean, they got good players. I mean,
no
I
question.
mean, and Florida's got good players. I mean, that's so. Hey,
and it's a rivalry game, so
go over there and see what you can get done.
Yeah.
I mean, and when's the last time? I'm trying to think of the last game Florida won in Tallahassee. Would that have been?
That was Mullins' second year.
Yeah, or it might have been. Yeah,
that was when Kodak Black was there.
It's right.
On the sideline and in the locker room.
He wasn't there for the next game. I can tell you.
No,
they put an end to that. But no, that it's been a tough place to play for Florida.
But
recently.
they've won some games there. So
yeah, they have. Hey, Zook won there. If Zook can win there, anybody can win there.
He thought it saved his job, but no, too late.
It did not. Look, FSU's got a good team, and we'll just see what happens. But and again, a lot of it will depend on what.
Yeah, and I mean, is Florida going to be like last year, where they have to win to get bowl eligible? I mean, who knows?
Well, last 2 years because they had to beat them.
Yeah, they did.
On the miss,
You're right.
The guy whiffing on the kickoff.
Yeah,
that
was classic.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. But hey, don't forget, this is an FSU team that's going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder all year.
After last year, no
everybody
question.
says, "Do you think FSU got screwed last year?" And I go, "Yes," and I enjoyed it very much. So they did get. It was not fair, but no. I'm all in favor of not doing fair things to FSU.
But what isn't really fair is that Georgia wasn't in the playoff last year.
No.
That's not fair.
Well, I mean, I think you could put both those teams in there. Would you want to watch FSU play in the playoffs last year? No, not with what they.
Not with what they were putting on the field at quarterback.
But if they were in the playoffs, they would have put some. Yeah, the quarterback situation.
It was just no good.
So that is FSU. All right, so that'll do it for our preview. And I don't know, Robbie, what do you think the ceiling is, and what do you think the floor is for this football program this year?
Well, the schedule's really hard, and everybody I talk to is going, well, they're only going to win 5 or 6. But I think 7 home games, the roster's better. I think 8 wins is possible. I think that I wouldn't be stunned if they won 8 games. But I wouldn't be stunned if they lost 7. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, that's where I am too. I have them. Their ceiling for me is 9, and now if they
go 9-3 that schedule, they're in the playoffs.
They're in the playoffs because that would mean that they would have beat. Well, it depends on who they beat and who they don't, but. When you have Georgia and you have Texas and you have Ole Miss, even if you lose all 3 of those, that means you beat LSU, you beat Miami, you beat Kentucky. So I mean, you won at FSU. So if they get to 9, I think they're in the playoffs. But that's not going to be easy. There's no doubt about it.
If they did somehow win 9, they'd be like the surprise team in college football, really. Which I think they're capable of being a big surprise team.
Do that. Do I think they will? Probably not. My floor is like 4-8, and I think yours is probably around the same
5
place.
and 7, 4,
4-8, where they just things don't go right, and the schedule is so tough that it becomes a steamroller.
Yeah,
and that happened to Will Muschamp the year that he lost to Georgia Southern. But I mean, he had lost Driscoll and then lost Dominic Easley.
The injuries just were incredible,
and then they just. They weren't competitive,
no.
And it was really sad to watch. So this Florida team, I will say this, under Billy Napier has been competitive with everybody.
They have.
They've got to find a way to win. They've got to find a way to get over the hump. They've got to find a way to make 2 more plays a game. 1 on defense, 1 on offense.
Yeah.
And they'll be fine.
Well, they were close to 7-5 last year, and nobody had been talking about the hot seat. But that's why to me the early part of the schedule is crucial. It's a chance to get maybe up to 5-1. If you do that, you got a chance. But if they falter early, then it's going to be trouble.
If they're 4-2 after those 6 games, then I don't like their chances of. Well, they may get bowl eligible, but
you look at how tough the schedule gets as you get deeper into it.
But if you can get 6-0 through that, which is very possible. I mean, I know that. look, I'm not looking at chopped liver here, okay? I know we've got Miami. You got to go to Starkville.
A&M at home.
You got A&M at home. You got to go to Knoxville. That's 6-0 is going to be a hard thing to do, but I think it's the potential's there to do it.
I think it's there too,
and we're going to find out a little bit about a lot of coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, not only Austin Armstrong with Ron Roberts. Okay, so does that work really well?
Yeah.
We find out if Harris is really a good secondary coach. We find out if Tyler Miles, all the work he did as strength coach, the new strength coach coming in, if it all worked, if they've got better. Because I say this all the time, Robbie, you don't get stronger and faster during the season.
No.
You get it before the season, then during the season you try to maintain everything. So we'll see if they're able to do it.
And there's one thing we left out, Pat, and that's what role DJ Lagway is going to play on this team.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knows at this point. We're all assuming he'll get a package of plays. But, during the spring, he flashed a lot of impressive stuff, and you have to think he's going to play a role on this team.
I think he could have scored 2 or 3 touchdowns if they didn't, they were stopping at play because the guy would be near him. So, and that could be a big factor. Now, we all like to say, well, it's going to be a Tebow league, but who knows what it's going to be.
We don't know. We're just going to wait and see.
It's going to look. This is Graham Mertz's team. But
and Napier has made it obvious he loves this guy. He loves the way he runs his offense. He's his guy. But Lagway's going to. I think he's going to play a role in there in some way, but we'll find out.
And I would say to do it just kind of like 3rd and 1. Put him in there. Run a jump pass.
But I guarantee you the Miami defensive coaches are already planning for some DJ Lagway in that game.
But that's the great thing is if you get worried about him.
Yeah, make them prepare for something maybe they're not even going to get.
And then that's what we used to have with or they used to have with when you would have Tebow in there and he would be coming in, you go, hey, I don't think they really knew what they were at Tennessee. They knew what they were going to see. And he's ran for 4 yards on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1.
4th and 1, yeah.
And then they threw a touchdown on the next
There
play.
he goes.
So anyway, we'll see that. Who do you got in the SEC title game? We'll wrap it up with that.
Let me think, Pat.
Well, I'll tell you. I know who
I think
got.
Texas and Alabama.
Really? I've got Texas and Ole Miss.
That's interesting. I don't see Ole Miss in there.
Ole Miss lost 2 games last year to Georgia and to Alabama. I think they'll get through it this year. I don't think they play one of those teams this year. I just got a feeling that Georgia's going to fall off just a little bit, but we'll see.
They might. I kind of a lot of people feel that way. I think a little bit.
Here's what the thing I miss the most about traveling with Robbie and going to cover all these games. I don't miss Starkville, but was coming up with all the games we could watch when we got to the hotel.
Yeah, that was good.
I'd have a little sheet like, all right, we got this game at this time.
What also was great is planning out your open date.
Oh, God. Now they're all open days.
It's great.
Yeah, I'm excited.
We're undefeated.
Yeah.
With open
Haven't
dates.
lost a game yet. No. Haven't missed a deadline. All right, that's going to do it for our preview, and we are. You can continue to listen to me if you want to on the radio on WRUF, and I write on there on WRUF.com as well. The back nine's still there. People come up to me and say, "Oh, we missed you," and I go, "Well, you just missed the convenience of me." Because the newspaper will come on. Guess what? You can't even get that anymore.
Can't find a newspaper anymore. So.
And, of course, Robbie's on a lot with me. He's on on the podcast every Monday. We do the yes, no way, or maybe. We have fun doing that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, Pat.
So we've really enjoyed it. And hopefully you join us every Saturday for home games for Gator Nation Game Day here at Emerson Alumni Hall. It is the place to be for tailgating. It is a lot of fun. A lot of people have a great time. Hopefully you'll be here for it. Until next time, I am Pat Dooley. He is Robbie Andreu. We are out of here.